I'm Emily Kapsikevich, and I'm hosting a chat with Dennis Tran from the Squirrel Space website and resource group. Squirrel Space is a 501c3 nonprofit that raises awareness, support, and advocacy for people and communities that identify as neurodivergent. I've got Dennis Tran with me today. I'm very excited to introduce him. Dennis is a queer, disabled, and late identified AuDHD, which is autistic and ADHD, and partially blind Vietnamese American storyteller, speaker, and inclusion strategist based in LA. He most recently wrote and starred in his short film Crosswalk, which we'll look at a little bit later. With his background in public health, media, digital health, and nonprofit leadership, Dennis truly bridges lived experience with systems to change and advance neurodiversity, disability justice, and mental health advocacy, especially within the AANHPI communities. His work has previously been featured in several different media publications, including Jubilee Media, Business Insider, ASAM News, and SHRM. He has spoken at UCLA, UCSF, Sony Pictures, and more, using storytelling to foster healing, visibility, and belonging. Welcome, Dennis. Thank you for joining us. Anything that you'd like to do to introduce yourself to our viewers and to who might be listening?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting me to be a part of this conversation today on like autism, embracing autism. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, April is Autism Acceptance Month, and May is Mental Health Awareness and also AAPI Heritage. What's special about this month for you, Dennis?
I think for me, it's like being, I guess, with autism accepting us is kind of embracing, the how I think, how I experience the world, and like it's just acknowledging differences, especially at a time when grew up, especially growing up, like I didn't really have language for my autism, ADHD, or neurodivergence. That yet alone, like there was conversation about mental health, disability, neurodivergent was always kind of like tucked away and not often talked about or dismissed or overlooked, and a lot of times often contributed to my like diagnosis journey. And so of course like having the overlap between like autism acceptance month, but I think how May is also like mental health awareness month, but also like also API heritage month is also a lot of overlapping identities, cultural background, and groups and awareness that are important to me and important to my work, to shed light on a common topic that is often not talked about.
Yeah, yeah. And when we think about accepting and embracing autism, I think it's important to understand how people identify. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of your diagnosis and your self-identification and your journey, and how you identify?
Yeah, so I was first diagnosed with autism at the age of 27. That's pretty late. Like it was 10 years, and 10 years prior, I was diagnosed with glaucoma. And both of those are both genetics, tied to genetics, and both of those, like as I come to terms with my diagnosis, like at the age of 27, I realized like my dad also has like glaucoma growing up, and we knew about the glaucoma part, and we knew like he was like partially blind, and he also kind of was like disabled. But of course, like the autism aspect was like not often talked about. We didn't have language for it, and of course, it was like he was most likely undiagnosed neurodivergent and undiagnosed like autism, uh, for most part. And I grew up a lot where there's a lot of comparison between me and my dad a lot, and it's like, of course, they're like how I saw his own family member, his own sibling view of disability is like very negative, very much like, oh, like why isn't he like this, or like why can't he tie his shoes, or why doesn't he eat vegetable and stuff like that. And it's like for me, it's like I also kind of struggle with similar things, like tying my shoes growing up, and oftentimes being judged at for not knowing how to do these basic things, or even like eat vegetable a lot. It's like, and a lot of times it's like, of course I didn't grow up with anything understanding. I thought I was like, oh, I'm just being picky, or I'm just being like, oh, like I why can't I just do something everyone else can do? And it was like, it was only until like was diagnosed with autism at the age of 27 that I was able to put the piece together. I was like, wait a minute, it's the sensory differences and so like kind of social cues, and like and like hypermobility and all the stuff like that goes into it. And like how like mobility skills and all stuff like that. Those all come to play, but I don't think we ever had the language or understanding of that at the time. And most of the time, if we ever talk about mental health or you ever talk about disability or neurodiversity, it's very usually extreme or severe cases. That's like, oh, someone's like very like crazy or like very those type of things or like intensify. But oftentimes like we exist on a spectrum. We exist like, and just because you only meet one person, you'll meet one person on the spectrum or AHPI or whatnot. So it's not necessarily everyone share unique the same experiences, but there are common traits and characteristic of like what does it mean to be autistic, what it means to be ADHD or neurodivergent or disabled. But a lot of research and data have been kind of been on like white cis male boy, and oftentimes like a lot of like people who come from cultural diverse background or different intersectional group identities get like missed out on or get or look on because because they don't see themselves represented in the autism diagnostic criteria, the DSM-5, and so it leaves out a lot of like people, and especially BIPOC community like myself, like, and especially AHPI community group members end up being late diagnosed in life.
Yeah, yeah. And you've been really courageous and you've learned a lot. And can you talk a little bit about how you've used self-expression or podcasting to really share your story with other people, since we know that you do a lot of healing and work through advocacy and self-expression. Tell me a little bit about how you have kind of understood your identity by being able to express it and share it with others.
I feel like before I had the language of my autism and ADHD or neurodivergent, I was always drawn to the creative arts and do stories and to connecting with people. Like whether it's like I was playing video games growing up, and I also kind of resonate with story characters and stories, or kind of watching my favorite TV shows, like kind of resonate with characters and development and how the characters are and the storylines and connect with or do those type of things that. And of course, like when I was in college, I was always drawn to the arts, and like I was always in a dance team and choir, always kind of doing those type of expression. But I think before I was even like understood what I need to express myself, because oftentimes in Asian culture, there's oftentimes like self-expression was not even like embraced at all. It's more like just keep everything inside yourself, just kind of follow the rule to be successful based on survival mentality. So I kind of that was kind of like the playbook I was given and understood as. And so I never really thought about like self-expression. Like even having tattoos like in Asian culture was kind of like judgy and like gangster. Just think about social that. And of course like even like the pursuing the creative arts or like performing art was seen as a risk and not encouraged, even though like most Asian families like do let their family members like pursue the arts as hobbies and just like interests like playing piano and also classical music and stuff like that. But then for my family, it's more like it was like, oh yeah, like just focus on school, just focus on academia, and just get a good job for stability. But pursuing the creative art was kind of like, oh, like it's a waste of time. It's just like for fun. It's not something to take seriously. So pretty much, I never really give myself permission to doing that stuff. So so for me, it's like in college, I was like, I just kind of want to explore that, to have fun with it, and just like just explore it, just do something I would never get the opportunity to do in reality in my life. And so that's where I took a chance to do that. And so, but oftentimes, like growing up, I also kind of like in high school, I was also exposed to like the YouTube area, a YouTube creator, and the Asian media on there, and the early creators of like Asian representation. Of course, like that was very important for me too, where I got to see other people like me, like growing up, and especially Asian in the media and stuff like that was very limited to, just what you kind of see martial artists or like kind of like the negative stereotypes that we kind of see in the media, both from Asian men and also Asian women as well. Like like how like there's like kind of that we kind of been exposed to, but also the limited representation out there, and oftentimes it's like I don't see myself fully represented. I guess the only early representation was like kind of like the Yell Ranger, kind of those type of things, but it was a very limited, and let alone disabled and neurodivergent representation was non-existent growing up either. So I didn't have much representation to look for. So kind of like Asian YouTuber like who's singing, dancing, and just showing story were all just things that I just like enjoy having, other than just video games. Like growing up was like that's what shaped me. That should shape my viewpoint. And for me, it's like how I kind of got to a place where my own storytelling was because of these like creators, early creators that kind of share their stories, and that's how I kind of learned. That's how I also discovered my own life coach who came from this creative space as well, who started her own podcast sharing her mental health journey, who talk about like her journey about navigating life as an adult, like expressing herself. And I thought to myself, like, like that's something want to do too, because it's very healing for me to kind of hear these stories. I feel connected to other people, especially going to college, going to school. Like none of my peers were even openly talking about these things either, like at the time either. And the school system wasn't even supportive of like mental health or have any tools for disability at the time either. There's lack of understanding, lack of resources. So of course, like hearing stories from other perspectives who are especially older than me, sharing advice and tips was very helpful for me to learn, connect with other people, to share experiences and know that I'm not alone in my own experiences and the struggle that I kind of face on a day-to-day basis that no one really talked about was very helpful. And of course, like one pivotal moment I recall was in 2012 when Master Chef Christine Ha, like who's someone who's blind, who's also like young who became blind like in her late teens or like early college year, kind of resonate with me, who I also became partially blind like before I started college. So I kind of felt like it was like someone I resonate with who also share their experience, but someone who also openly share about their lived experiences, their journey, their challenges, and how they navigate through life as well. Because oftentimes, like I grew up like in a culture where vulnerability was seen as a weakness, or you should share your story, ask for help. So I kind of kept things inside for a long time. But having representations like her, like was very important for me to kind of see a different perspective of like what it means to be disabled and what's possible out there, because all I had was my dad growing up. So of course there was a limitation. So of course, like when I got my diagnosis in 2020, it was clear that I wanted to share my story too. I want to leverage my story, my experiences, to help other people. Also, for you to find community for myself, because I kind of struggle to find community, that connection for over 2 decades, like navigating life silently like a lone wolf and not having any sort of support system or people who understood me, and just be able to have like an outlet for do that. So that's when I started. So after kind of like working with one life coach, and then kind of getting that mentorship and things like that from her, and to kind of get to a place where I'd be able to kind of share my stories, and then started to build my own community and meet other people in the advocacy spaces. And became a disability advocate because I never intended to be a disabled advocate. It just kind of happened because as I started to share my story, that's what considered advocacy is, and that's how I started. Yeah, I started to like becoming the advocate, and then just be able to meet other people in the disability advocacy space, and slowly build my community over the last 5 years. And since then, like my advocacy work also transformed into other things like speaking opportunity, consulting opportunity, to like featuring media outlet, to even just like and just like being on like even like on like featured in like media outlets and stuff like that, and also like kind of like YouTube series and stuff like that, on being interviews on various platforms and stuff like that. So kind of and being participating in different fellowship opportunities, stuff like that, and it's just like open doors that I never thought existed in ways that like I never knew was possible. And of course, being a first gen professional and college student graduate, it's like I never really knew what career opportunity was possible, because all I knew was like doctor, lawyer, or teacher, or like just regular 9 to 5 career option that was like available for me or I was exposed to. So of course, like having just like all these opportunities pop up was like kind of just like learn to adjust and adapt as I go, because I didn't really know what was possible either. Because oftentimes, like growing up, like there's like no
find what's possible.
Yeah, because there was like not necessarily any representation out there what was possible for even someone with this disability to even get a job, or have a career, even like in whatever I'm doing now. Because like oftentimes it's like disabled people aren't encouraged to work. They're oftentimes forced into like like policy regulation that's like that kind of like prevent them from work or kind of like limit their ability to work because they're like, oh, disabled aren't worthy of working, or like are it's kind of like, and there's outdated programs and support that doesn't encourage people to work, only force people to apply. So I kind of like live in that mentality for a long time until I realized like, I'm still young, I'm still like here, I graduated from college, I'm able to get jobs, so like why am I like in this situation? Why am I stuck here? I think I was stuck for such a long time because I was like, like I can't get a job because I was like, my brain worked differently. And of course 85% autistic and neurodivergent folks like are underemployed, but despite having a bachelor degree. So I kind of felt like I fell into this category for so long because I didn't really understand why. And I was like, well, my brain just works differently. I'm very ahead of like thing. I'm able to connect dots. And a lot of times, like I always like was drawn to startup innovators and organizations. So of course it's like I kind of feel like there's like a lot of like things where like outdated policy, outdated information, just like not necessarily supporting the life that I was living. And so oftentimes like I kind of feel very undersupported. So a lot of times like through my own advocacy work, through all my creative outlets has been just like being the representation I needed when I was a kid and being changed from what I see in the world, just creating those resource opportunity and just pioneering what was like what I never had growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something really powerful in that you said you needed to give yourself permission and you need to redefine what's possible. And so you've moved through like learning and discovering your neurodivergence. You did a lot of sharing stories. We call it sharing acorns in Squirrel Space, which is hearing someone's story, sharing your own. And now you're into film. Your latest project is Crosswalk. Why don't we take a look at it a little bit? And I just can't wait to hear a little bit more from you about what this stage, of your, of what's possible is. So let's spend a little bit, like a minute, and we're gonna watch the intro to your newest film, which is Crosswalk. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so we can watch this for a little bit together on YouTube. All right. So we get to the actual crosswalk scene. How does it feel, Dennis, to actually have made a film?
I think it's like a long process for it. Like oftentimes like something I kind of want to do for a while, but it's oftentimes like it does take a lot of like, yes, I can have the idea, yes, I can be an aspiration for it, but oftentimes like having the right people, having people to actually want to do this thing and be able to take part of it too. So of course I was fortunate to have a great team that was compiled together to have that opportunity to be able to have the opportunity that actually want to enter this competition with me to do this type of film. So oftentimes like like, like people always encourage like what can you do by yourself, but oftentimes like there's things you can do by yourself, but there's also things that you need people to work with too. So it's also not something that you're not so do everything on your own. So I think that's really important thing was like how like come to terms with like to be able to lead on your people and to be able to collaborate and be open to opportunities, but also like having people to do it with is like very important as well. Like and not just like something that like you're not meant to do everything alone.
Yeah. And it's a great film. Tell us a little bit about what it's about to you, coming from you, you wrote it. Tell me what it's about and tell me where you submitted it to and what you're hoping to see.
I think for me, it's like the film, like kind of centered around pretty much my own lived experiences of like growing up, like in a traditional Vietnamese American family, where I kind of feel misunderstood by my own parents, of like kind of like just navigating disability and neurodivergence and not understanding, and I kind of feel like they're not understanding, but also kind of focusing on the parents' perspective of like saving face, and like how traditionally in Asian family there's the desire of like, oh, like you're overprotective, but also you're very much like you're always seen as a child to your parents' eye, and they just want to like, and of course, like it also kind of stems from like being disabled, you mean like you can't do things for yourself, and like so like they always have to micromanage you, and like kind of being the helicopter parent. So of course, like, and of course, like for me, it's like as the Asian person, it's like kind of like breaking generational cycle, like kind of like not needing permission from my own parents to do things like as an adult, and just like doing things on my own term, kind of ruining those type of things. But then also like the idea of like, in the world you're kind of like not being misunderstood by society at large, like you're kind of like being not being understood, especially being autistic neurodivergent in the neurotypical world, you'd be kind of feel like you're misunderstood a lot of times. And of course, like, and also like navigating cultural stigma and not having being misunderstood by your parents either. You kind of have to navigate life yourself and stuff like that. So oftentimes, like I often think back around my own life and life experience, like how like this in a lot of my challenging moments, like or lowest point, I always had one person. So I kind of thought about like how one person kind of uplifted me, how one person was instrumental in me into where I am today and my growth, my healing journey to the person I am. So of course, like I kind of like play into this role of like having just one person or that one friend can also like make all the difference. And I think that's like the key thing was like the companionship, the friendship, and how that kind of carried through that. But also like even the kind of like how the natural aspect of that can come into play into the story, but also like how crosswalk is similar to my own experience of like my near death experiences of navigating streets of like getting car accident. Despite how you could be very cautious about everything, it can still happen to you. It's like it's despite like whether you're disabled or not.
Car accident? Did you say?
Yeah.
Did you say you got in a car accident?
Well, I got hit by a car, but yeah, it's like, but at the same time,
I didn't know that.
but at the same time, it's like it's really a reality of it. Which street or with accident that is an accessible, or the kind of there's a lot of sensory challenges, and also sometimes where there could be a reckless driver. So there's a lot of things that are out of control, like unpredictability of it, despite how much it is, and especially it's not just in the U.S. but in LA, there's like a lot of those type of things where it happens all the time, where the sidewalk isn't designed with inclusively and stuff like that. But in other countries too, there's like there are different ways of how street is designed. It's like it's also like where it's make it harder to cross the street as well. So I kind of thought about that angle and that aspect of it as well in terms of like navigating crossing a street as something like that. But also like crossing a street is also be like, oh yeah, like a crossroad, because it's also like kind of like navigating through transition changes and like and just like amplifying with the whole like uncertainty of like being misunderstood and like being anxious by the misunderstood and society that no one gets you. Those type of things that common disabled neurodivergent people kind of face on a day-to-day basis. So I kind of like play into that idea of that as well, and then pretty much like having my great team put everything together, help me kind of shoot it, like write it as well, and just like kind of help me kind of execute the storyline to kind of get to it today.
Yeah, Dennis, really, like you're incredible. Like I've been following you for the last year, and everything you put out is so authentic and it's so rich with meaning. And you've broken through yet another barrier to show the art of what's possible by creating this film. In what way have you broken through, limiting expectations that you used to have, especially around kind of what you mentioned with the struggle finding a job? This is a big breakthrough for you, right?
Yeah, I kind of feel like for me, I kind of feel like similar to my own journey of launching a podcast 5 years ago, was like kind of share my stories and just like letting things take off into a way that's like, hey, just whatever opportunity came, I just kind of embrace it and just like going through it. But oftentimes, like I kind of feel like now it's like similar to like what I come to terms with it now with like this film. It's like it's similar to like that experience 5 years ago, but this time it's like oh, like how did I embrace my intersectional identities, or like understanding the different identities that kind of shape me, the facet of my identities that kind of like shape who I am, because oftentimes I didn't have that language earlier
Yeah.
or like understanding of it until like 5 years ago. So similar to how I have like different facet identities, being queer, disabled, neurodivergent, partially blind, like low income, growing up like like with with mom and grandma, like, and it's kind of having that aspect of that and how those aspects shape me, and also kind of laying into the idea of like my career is not very non-linear. It's very much like I work in tech, I work in digital health, I work in public health, like media, entertainment. Like it was not always like a simple path consulting. Like I always kind of like done so many different things that it's like it was always never I was not meant to be in a box. And so for me it's like, and now like as I kind of became more a storyteller, speaker, consultant, and even like working in media and just expanding into like acting, producing, and all the stuff going on. It's like I kind of feel like it's pretty much like encapsulate the like the multi interdisciplinary and multi hyphenate aspect of myself. It's like hey, like I'm more than one thing, and that's okay. I'm not meant to fit into a box, and that's okay. And of course, like a lot of times, like early career advices, oftentimes is more like, like, hey, just focus on one thing, just do one thing, or are you Asian or American? It's either or, as opposed to like, hey, I can be both, I can be fully both, and all my identities are me. I'm not one or the other. I'm all of it. And of course, like similar to my career, it's like I don't have to do one thing. I can do both. I can do all, and like it's just one aspect. It's just everything that make me. And I think that's how I kind of like been approaching, I guess, this season of my life now, was like where like, hey, there's no more shrinking. It's more like embracing everything about me. Like, hey, I'm a storyteller, writer, speaker, consultant, actor, writer, producer, all sorts of things, and I work all these different layers. I have different all these layers of the identities, and this is make up me. I shouldn't have to shrink myself or hide part of myself to fit in to get opportunity. Rather, I should be embracing all of it, because this is me, and this is like who I am, and this is what I bring to my table, and my diversity is my superpower. And oftentimes, like it's often very like looked down upon, or looked, or kind of for me, it's like it's always like been like when you apply for a job, it's like always like, how can I shrink myself, or how can I adjust to fit into a certain expectation, when oftentimes like I'm never going to fit in someone else's expectation, because everyone's very different, and we have different standards, different things. So I'm always going to like cater toward something aspect of myself. But at the same time, it's like I'll just have people tell me like, "Oh, why don't you take this out, or why don't you just do this or do that?" But then I was kind of like always hiding parts of myself. I'm not really expressing who I am fully, or like I always have kind of put myself into a box to kind of fit the mold. When I kind of meant like I'm not meant to do that, and I kind of felt like I'm not fully embracing myself at all, or I had to kind of leave part of myself out. I kind of felt me I kind of didn't want to do that anymore, and kind of be in that position where like where my identities, or where my professional, like multi-hyphenate professional aspect, have to be take a backseat because of that. And I kind of feel like I find it more meaningful to be able to embrace all of that, embrace all of me, and embrace like the different facets of my identity, but also like my multi-hyphenate career, and just like multi-hyphenate self and creative, and just like be able to kind of pursue that, and I guess, and just be open to a lot of the opportunities. So I guess the main takeaway and advice I could give is like, be open and just be adaptable, because oftentimes like a lot of opportunities is not what you expect, and a lot of opportunities like I didn't grow up like preparing for. A lot of times like it just came to me because of like career opportunity, or these a lot of opportunities just came because I was just pretty open to it. Like how I kind of broke into tech, or how I kind of adjusted to different industry. It was just being open, and being curious, and being willing to try and do these different things. That how I kind of embrace these different career trajectory identities and stuff like that. And especially that's how it's very crucial in today's world too, where like a lot of jobs are being created, a lot of jobs being taken away. So it's like, and a lot of new things are popping up. So it's like something you never prepare for. You can prepare for. So it's the only times to be open, adaptable, and just be curious about these type of things, as opposed to be like, oh, having a fix. I have to do this, or it has to be worked out a certain way, because a lot of time, it didn't go according to the plan or how you expected things to be, but like opportunities just show up. Like this film, like I didn't expect myself to create a film this year. It just kind of happened and things line up. And I was kind of expecting myself to grow as a speaker or like kind of do more of like other like a writing project and stuff like that, like a book or so. But all the time, I kind of feel like this film just came into it and now learn to adjust to it and just like going, yeah, just going with the flow on this stuff, like and just running with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're breaking through more limits, and it feels like you gave yourself permission to fully embrace your intersectional identity. And then you gave yourself permission to break outside these boxes because you were not meant to be in a box. And so you're saying that you're leaving your mind and your body and spirit open. And because of that, who knows what's possible? So what's
Yeah.
next for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I had like a lot of opportunities. As I mentioned, it's like is a lot of these opportunities or like how I kind of learned to embrace myself was because of like those one people I mentioned in my life. Where it was like coach, where it was like my neurodiversity affirmed therapist, or where it was like someone who showed up for me at my lowest point. In various stages of my life, where it's like college roommate and stuff like that. So it's like various stages of my life is always like kind of helping to embrace aspect of myself. So I kind of like had to look at it from those lens of those aspects of for me. And for me, it's like I don't really know exactly what's next in terms of that, but I'm kind of pretty open to what's possible for me. It's like kind of like what opportunity, because for me it's like I'm always gonna be like, as I kind of learn to embrace my multi-hyphenate self and like the very facet of identities in me, I kind of feel like opportunities like have come to me in various different ways, where it was keynoting graduation or like kind of like getting the film into more festival and other thing like that, or just like even like just like like I mean I had like ideas and vision I would like to kind of do, but oftentimes more just like continue to destigmatize and raise awareness and just like help shape the world to be more nerd inclusive, affirming for all, but also like to kind of destigmatize that in the AHPI community is like kind of go for it, because oftentimes a lot of like the work I do is very a generational work, and so it often takes time, and so
Mhm.
oftentimes like it's just like kind of just be open to what opportunity comes out of it, and just adapting as I go.
Yeah. And what do you want, I guess, neurotypical allies and neurodivergent community members to know, especially this month, about embracing autism, knowing, there are no limits for you. What advice can you pass on to us about how to better embrace autism?
I feel like to embrace autism, it's like it's much more a complex journey, because not autism is like you meet one autistic person, you meet one person who's autistic, and you got to think
Hmm.
about intersectionality, like those intersectionality component, those facet identities. Like autism doesn't exist in just like binary understanding of it. It's like more layers by the intersectional facet of identities that people belong to, different community group, cultural background people belong to, that kind of shape their own experiences and co-occurrences. A lot of ADHD, autism comes with ADHD, mental health challenges, and other neurodivergent condition as well that kind of shape their experiences. So oftentimes it's so layered that you have to kind of come to that, and also kind of embracing neurodiversity, affirming and psychological safe space for people to embrace their differences, but to show as they are and their authentic self, but also giving them the agency to choose to do so at their own pace and timing as well, and not just like forcing them, and to be able to co-create spaces together of
Hmm.
what that safe space look like, what that's like affirming space look like, because everyone's experience will be different in that way. And oftentimes like it's not just my way or the other, but it's how can we co-create spaces solution together, is like the way forward.
That's like real representation, right? It's like
Mm,
authenticity is
yeah.
co-creation versus being told how to do or what to act or so on. So that's really helpful advice. And with you being a multi-potentialite and multi-hyphenate, like there's anything, you could do anything. How do people support you or follow you? I've been following you for the last year. How do people really reach out and support you no matter what you end up doing? Because the sky truly is the limit for you. How do we support you?
Yeah, so you can definitely follow me on connect with me on LinkedIn, LinkedIn handle like Dennis Tran, or you could also connect me on follow me on IG at Dennis Tran, or like I also have like Crosswalk Film as like Instagram as crosswalk.film, where you can follow the film journey as well and just see where that goes. And of course, like I also have like donation link you want to like support my film as well, which is also linked into my IG channel as well. So and also like the film page as well. So just follow along there if you're curious about my journey and like where I'm up to next.
Yeah. And your creative and artistic streak has caught a lot of attention. I'm happy to share that Jasmine's Beat, which is a recreational therapy company and adaptive dance company, has kindly donated already to you. I'm excited to share that they wanted to sponsor actually this talk because they're very proud and want to embrace what you've done and what other ND artists are doing in this creative space, knowing that none of us belong in boxes. So just encourage everyone, please support Dennis. We're already starting to get donations. He's someone that I truly believe is going really, truly special places and is not only a storyteller for right now, but is going to continue to tell stories through art, music, and film. And you're not going to want to miss anything that Dennis does. So please join in with Jasmine's Beat and help get to know Dennis. Buy him some coffee. Donate through Squirrel Space. We've got a support donation set up where you can put Dennis's name as the reason for donating. 100% of donations are going to go to Dennis and are going to support whatever you choose to do in the future, because we agree we don't want to see you in a box. I don't even think there is a box big enough to hold you, Dennis. So thank you for joining us, and just congratulations for everything you accomplished. Thank you so much.
And thanks for having me as well for this conversation.
Absolutely.